Welcome to the latest edition of Digital Signage Debrief. I'm Callum from Allsee Technologies, and today I'm joined by some industry leaders in the AV and the digital signage sector, starting with Baoli over here.
Thanks, Callum, for having me. My name is Baoli. I'm Manager Director of Allsee Technologies. We're providing digital signage displays and also content management software. Thank you.
I'm Codling. I'm the Account Director for Media Group, Media Digital. We are one of the UK's leaders in Europe for integrating digital solutions, mainly for the grocery retail sector.
Callum, thanks for inviting us along. My name's Leadbitter. I own a company called Consultancy based out of Spain. We're more known for building out a global ecosystem, enabling retailers to scale and build out digital innovation.
Debrief, thanks Callum for introduction. Media Group, as Dan has said, digital integrators, digital signage providers, digital architects, and our vertical right now is the retail sector.
Excellent. Thank you for the introduction there, guys, and thank you for joining us today. Mark, especially thank you to you for taking the trip and leaving sunny Spain and visiting us here. At least the weather's better. Yeah, exactly. You brought some of the sun along with you. But yeah, I think this is a really good little round table for us all just to put in a video podcast form and discuss this industry that we all work in, we all have a lot of knowledge on. And we've all, over the past few years, really developed this strong ecosystem. I think a phrase which was coined by both Mark, Dean, you both really spoke about this ecosystem and pulled all of the businesses together to strengthen that. So it'd be interesting just to see everyone's thoughts on that. How is that playing a role in the market at the moment? How is the industry changed because of ecosystems like this that are able to work together and deliver projects to clients?
Callum, I think from my perspective, the analogy I give in terms of building out the ecosystem was a bit like building a house. You need an architect, you need a planning person, you need a chippy, you need a brickie, and you need somebody to kind of pull it together. So for me, retailers, the issue I think retailers have at the moment is post-COVID, redundancies, one person's now probably doing 3 people's jobs. Their boss comes along and asks them to look at digital innovation. It could take them 3 months. So we just basically have a platform amongst us all that we can basically give best practice, best hardware, best solutions, and do it at pace, rather than leaving a retailer spend 3-4 months trying to work out what they need. So I think that's why we've been so successful.
I'd echo Mark's sentiment there. I think hand on heart, Media Group wouldn't be where we are now without the support of partners. And I'd dare to say that some of those partners probably wouldn't be where they are without our support and Allsee technology support. I've always found the ecosystem to be absolutely vital for everything that we do. We're seen as the front line, but behind us we've got all those software developers, individual pieces of software, hardware, integrators, the whole thing we pull together, and it's fantastic because it's all like-minded people that we have in the ecosystem. They're all pulling the same direction. It's not like somebody wants to win the race. We're all winning the race because we're all working together.
I completely agree, and I think that value is shown to the customers as well. Ultimately, they get the best of both worlds. It's impossible for one company to completely specialise in absolutely everything that we all bring to the table here. We've got the relationships, the connections, and the networking strengths that Mark delivers. Media Group have the integration piece, the services piece, and we obviously have Allsee ourselves that bring that manufacturing. Having that all under one roof and being able to deliver that to a customer, the value is completely there. You can completely see why this would be beneficial to them as well.
But we don't try to hide that. We're very transparent with all our clients. We're actually proud of the partnerships that we have. We don't try to profess that Media Group is the solution and it's behind us. We've got all these teams of people that bring something together. We're proud of the partnerships, so we'll promote those in all of our literature to say these are the people that we work with.
And Callum, it's interesting, I had this conversation the other day. With the speed that kind of the AV world and innovation world's moving, days of being a traditional AV partner, and I've been in this industry 5 years, but the days of nailing a screen to a wall, plugging your media player and off you go, those days are gone. AI is coming down the path. And part of my consideration is you know, AV companies are going to have to evolve, or they're going to die, because, you know, if a customer comes to them and says, well, what's the impact of, you know, AI? How does that, you know, fit into my estate? You know, AV companies have got to, you know, keep up to speed, or bring in partners that actually enable them to kind of grow.
For sure.
Brilliant, brilliant. I just quickly add on something, which is exactly as Mark said, build a digital signage like building a house, which is Mark acting as, we call them employer agent, which on behalf of the brand, giving them best, you know, work with them, deliver the whole solution. And we got Dean in here, system integrators, and put everything together. Apart from that, actually, the ecosystem is much bigger. If we think about the content creation part, which we also need to involve with the marketing agent, content creation talent to work together. And whether on that is the technology side. Yep. Obviously, we providing hardware, software. Actually, behind us, there's more ecosystem. We're working with the universities, research organizations to deliver best, like you just said, AI technologies, sensor technology. So the whole ecosystem is much bigger and wider. So at the end, the customers, the brand, get benefit from that. So they have better tools engaging with their customers. So it's I'm so glad that everybody now working together. Before that was everybody does their own work. As exactly as Mark said, now we have to work together to deliver that.
For sure.
Yeah.
But Baoli, you need these skill sets or the ecosystem to, you know, help educate the retailer, you know, because you're dealing with somebody maybe in purchasing or marketing who's like, I need AI. Why do you need AI? You know, what you're trying to do, you know, what's your, you know, my philosophy is always about improving customer experience, 12 times, selling more. You know, the biggest thing at the moment, you know, retail media networks, you know, it seems to be the new buzzword. It's been around for 5-6 years. You know, 3 years ago, it was omni-channel. We need to be omni-channel, and that was all the discussion. Sure. That's now gone, and it's now, I need a retail media network. Why? I don't know. You know, so that's where we need to have, you know, educate customers, just in terms of, you know, because it is down to customer experience.
Yeah, I think that you know, customers are demanding more now, and like you said, there's the AI piece and there's the IoT piece, which is coming into things. And we'll definitely touch on that in this podcast as well. We'll go into detail about these new models that have come into the industry. But just sticking on this kind of ecosystem as well.
And I think the partnership thing as well is that, and Dean touched on it a minute ago, which is that, you know, we're not afraid to talk about it and promote it. And I think when you look at the market at the moment, I think a lot of people trying to profess to be one-stop shops, and like you said, it's impossible to be experts in every field, from hardware, software, and then we talked about there about introducing the relevant, you know, additional partners in as and when that requirement comes in place. And we're not afraid of that, and I don't think anybody around here around the table is afraid about the fact that if there was a requirement for something that was completely different, that we would introduce the relevant partner in that place to support the ecosystem as it is, and also to support them in their projects. You know, and that when we look at the market, what a lot of the retailers at the moment are getting, and you know why they want a retail media network, is somebody has spoke about it but has no experience in it, has no experience dealing with the agencies and the brands, and understanding the brands' budgets and understanding how you can lock them. And you know, from our perspective, it's about, you know, from Allsee's perspective, they might not have that necessary direct use to those people, but through yourself or through us, they might do, and therefore can talk about it with more customers. So not only is the ecosystem probably helping just our customers as a group, they're probably helping us with other customers that we have outside of the ecosystem. So that's why I think that the ecosystem is pivotal, because it allows us to unlock things that we wouldn't have had before. And Dean said that, you know, before, you know, we wouldn't have been in the position we are, when we wouldn't think that, you know, some of these partners wouldn't be in theirs. And it all comes from that openness as a group to go, you know, we might not understand something, but you know, between us we'll know somebody that will.
But also, Dan, is how that fits in. Because a lot of the things I see at the moment is someone comes out with a new widget and they're going, yeah, but we're not getting any traction with the customer. And I'm going, yeah, but the problem is the customer's got this architecture. You're trying to sell a new widget, and they're like, well, if I take that piece of the jigsaw, where do I plug it in? How does this all fit together? What's the impacts? You know, and I think that's where sometimes people just struggle. You've got to look at it as a whole solution, rather than going, I'm trying to sell AI, I'm trying to say AI, and I can't. And it's like, yeah, but where's that fit into the customers? You know.
Yeah, I think you have to understand exactly what the customer wants first, and then we can drive that that external piece and show them how to get more out of what they are looking at. And I think, you know, with the ecosystems, you touched on it there, Dan, you have to build a level of trust. I think that's played a massive part in it. I think we've all developed a decent amount of success over the last few years because we've trusted each other as partners and we've had confidence in each other's partners. We know that, you know, when I speak to Dean or Dan about the servicing side of things, I'm going to get the information that I need, and it works. We pull that together. Obviously, we've worked on some of the larger projects. You know, 3 years ago, I think we started those. How do you think that helped build this ecosystem that we're in now? The first project that we had was obviously in the tobacco sector. Dean, Dan, if you'd like to share a little bit on that one as well, that would be quite interesting to know more about.
Yeah, so we saw an exciting brief, and we knew that we were in a strong position because we were able to create those bespoke solutions. Just like lots of retailers, they have existing space. They'd like a screen, but that space doesn't necessarily fit a 16:9 traditional aspect. So, yeah, our USP was to be able to create those bespoke solutions, but there were so many permutations within that solution, different sizes, combinations, synchronisations, etc., etc. Not forgetting the initial challenge of not having any technical drawings to be able to create the solution to effectively mount. If you recall, we had to go to a factory and we physically measured some furniture, and then we created prototypes. But then we were working with the retailer's preferred partner of CMS, and then had to work on the challenge of having their hardware integrate with our hardware of our bespoke screens. But you know what, we were blessed. We produced, I think that project was 5,500 displays, 3,400 locations, and our failure rate has been absolutely minuscule. So we're really proud of that, and I think that success has opened doors for us to other retailers. Just like you were talking about the ad network piece, I think retailers right now are reading the Grocer or Retail Week magazine and seeing such a brand has generated £1 million worth of ad revenue. And all those other brands think to themselves, we want to be a part of that. Yeah. Similarly, with what we did for our screens, we received lots of inquiries on the back of that success.
Yeah. I think we've seen it as well, Baoli, you could probably chime in, this need now, since we've done this bespoke stretch display, all of a sudden everyone wants something bespoke, everyone wants something custom, unique to them. We've said for quite a while now that digital signage, you know, the 16:9 screens, it's a very mature market. We see them, customers are used to seeing that in their day-to-day. You go into retail, supermarkets, you see screens, but what we don't see as much of at the moment is still that custom size screen in bespoke furniture, something unique to them themselves. And it's not just the hardware side of things, it's even the content now. You know, content is specific to locations, and that expectation is there. And Baoli, what do you think? Has that opened more opportunities for the hardware perspective as well?
100% sure. I think this industry, particularly on the one you just mentioned, digital display industry, if we consider these big brands who manufacture digital display almost in a dominant position, which as a result of that, they let market adapt to what they have rather than the brands adapt to what customers want. So in the past, basically everybody is, if you want to use a screen, use standard 16:9 ratio screen. That's available. So retailers don't have choice. But that's not the best business practice. The best business practice, I always think, is we should follow what market wants, what customers want. Yeah. Exactly as what in this situation which Dean shared. Customer wants special size display. As a manufacturer, you should be able to deliver that solution. Definitely. I think this will be in the future digital display market going to be that way. So we have to have that capability to fill that requirement. As a result, of course, after that project we successful with Dean, we have done many others in the last 2 years, which is phenomenal. I think that's the right way going forward in the future.
Yeah. And again, that's reliant on the ecosystem, because we wouldn't have this information from a manufacturer of hardware. It's like you said, we can guess and assume, okay, we think customers might want this, but it's the feedback and it's the input from the integrators and those that are actually on the ground with the customer saying no.
But Callum also, you know, if you take the supermarket projects we did probably the last one we were just finishing, from conception through to sign off, the speed that I went through from working with the furniture companies back through to Allsee, to Media Group, years ago that probably would have taken probably a year in terms of conceptual through to, build, whereas it was probably done.
Yeah, Mark, I just quickly add on that one. Actually, in the past, not only take a year, probably never going to happen. Why is it not happening? Because the manufacturer always sitting on the behind. They don't engage or don't have even chance to engage with the retailer or integrator. Exactly. Exactly, never talks. That's where you guys build this ecosystem. So bring us like Ding. When you initially get this requirement, you bring us to the field to measure the furnitures, so we know exactly what customer want. We can develop products according to that requirement. Such things very rare happened before. So this is things really changing the market. The ecosystem is important, and the important is the integrators have deeper technology, deeper engagement with brand as well, which is phenomenal.
But Baoli also the ability, and I think it's probably where we are a little bit unique, and we can kind of brag about it a little bit, is we're not just talking about the UK.
Yes.
Working in projects in Europe, Sweden. So we can pick this up. I worked with a particular well-known pharmacy, and it was about doing a store in Nottingham, and then going, right, we can pick that up and do it in Shanghai, or we can do it in Sweden. Because, clients aren't just based in one territory, they are based across Europe. And you don't want to be reinventing the world, and if you can scale it, there's some commercial reasons behind it. So, I think between Allsee, Media Group, Lead, I think we sit in a fairly unique position. There'll be some AV companies out there claiming that they do the world. I challenge you.
Now, I think just touching back on what we've talked about, our partnerships. Going back a few years, what we've delivered over this last couple of years would have been unheard of. People would have been scared to share their IP. We're actually sharing IP now. We're allowing APIs, integrations. We're sharing APK files to make sure that the solutions are the most robust they can possibly be.
Yep.
I think a few years ago, a hardware partner would have been very reluctant to have shared that IP, and the solution may not have been as robust as it is today. But I think that's come from those partnerships and that trust that's been built over that period of time. For me right now, I don't have to sit on a meeting that was with a CMS provider, let's say now Signage, do a fantastic job with us, and also I know that between those two parties, they're going to deliver the solution that Media Group is going to integrate.
Absolutely.
I think that's the key. Otherwise, you're a busy fool. You're sitting on that many calls and that many meetings, you never get anything done. Yeah. But having those partners that you can trust just makes everything so much easier.
Yeah, that is very important. Another thing as well, kind of just moving on towards the emerging trends in digital signage, like we touched on it there, the custom displays, and then we've had this second project which we delivered this year, and now we've seen LED become much more prominent in the market, and we're all pushing that industry forward, and it's this new space now. LED's been around for a while, but all of a sudden price points are much more acceptable. Availability is there, the robustness of the LED is there as well. Are we seeing trends towards LED and LCD, or is it still very even across the board? But we've seen really good project delivered this year with LED, and that was custom LED as well.
Yeah. So we've done we've done several thousand LED displays this year. I think what we're finding is that with a traditional LCD screen, you had a certain aspect ratio, then you had HD, then you had 4K, then you had 8K. But that's taken a long time to get to that point. If you think how LED has progressed over a short period of time, that pixel pitch now is phenomenal. It's cinema quality. It's incredible, and I think brands are seeing the benefits of that for sure. We're getting many more inquiries for LED. I see LED being shop fascias.
Exactly.
I think we've all travelled, and I think the UK is behind the curve a little bit within shopping malls, as an example. We're going to see a lot more LED headers.
I think so. I think it allows you to create larger screens, larger format, different shapes. You can have it going around doors. You can do entryways with LED. Obviously, we've done the gantry headers, LED. You've got different versions. We've got the surface mounted diodes. We've got glue on board, and COB. All these different new technologies coming up. Dan, what do you think? Where do you see that moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all mentioned it there, that the price point, 2-3 years ago was probably not considered versus LCD from an initial capex perspective for any customer or any integrator for the customer. What we're seeing now is that price point kind of at a level, especially even with custom, that means that it competes with the LCD. And obviously then it's easy to go back to customers and say, look, the benefits of maintenance, etc., the ease of management, the longevity of the life, all of the things that would come with the benefits of LED. But it's always been a blocker because price point's always been, a capex request is 50% higher, and now that's not the case anymore. Meaning that it's an easier sell because essentially the customer sees that a maintenance piece is going to be easier. They can see that from a longevity point of view, if there was a failure, it's taking out a cabinet or a module rather than taking out the entire display and replacing it. And Dee mentioned there about shopping malls, and we think about the UK high street at the moment, and the fact that it's going to hopefully be regenerated, going through a lot of shopping malls and hopefully seeing that being in the future. These shopping centres are going to start very quickly realising that they're going to have to potentially diversify their space to not only be single retailer going in and using that space, that they need to potentially multi-use that retail location for more, and digital allows that, because you haven't got to have every 4 weeks or 5 weeks somebody go in and rip out a shop. You can have an upgrade of that site, which means that you can have somebody go in and have somebody have a tenancy for 3 months and then be swapped over really quickly to a new retailer that's coming in and buying that space. So the shopping centres are very quickly going to have to get into the model of brands or retailers are not going to be able to take a multi-year tenancy, or certainly small retailers are not going to be able to take a multi-year tenancy, and they're going to have to diversify to that. And that's where digital helps with an LED, because essentially it's then sold in such a way where it allows them to be flexible.
I really like that idea, especially in the retail market where pop-up shops are becoming more and more prominent. Brands taking over those retail spaces. Like you said, being able to go into a space, have it 2 weeks, it's this one particular brand, and then literally the day after they've exited, someone else has gone in there, and the whole shop has completely transformed because of the digital.
And you don't need 15 people to go and do it. You update this digital signage in sight, you maybe update the layout slightly, but it's all modular. And again, that all comes from the fact that digital and the new technology there, especially with LED, allows that flexibility that you can take over an entire location.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great.
You rebrand a whole store within 30 seconds.
And that's been like the souk scenario, and unfortunately that didn't quite work, where that was too ahead of the game.
They were ahead, weren't they? I mean, they had a good model, and I think if that was expanded further, I think
we spoke about it yesterday, and I think that's going to be a model which somebody's going to come along and execute that really well. And I don't think it'll just be one. I think there'll be multiple versions of that.
But if you think about shopping centres doing that, and realising that half their space is sold on a multi-year tenancy because they're to the big retailers, and the other half is used for short-term, mid-term. How many shopping centres we walk through in Sky are standing in the middle of the centre?
See more of that.
And why can't they take a space in there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and the shopping centres have comfortable that it's all managed by them. They get the maximum space and usage, and they're not standing in the middle of the walk play, where they're interrupting people's journey, because again, that's a customer journey thought process as well as the technology. So
definitely. So we're seeing now that digital is part of the shop design, isn't it? I think it has been for a long time, but I think now more than ever, it really is part of that design. It's not just a case of there's a wall, we put a screen on there.
No.
It's like we said,
but Callum, that goes back to the ecosystem that we're running around with. Store design, interior fit out, furniture, build, and innovation. It needs to be all part. Digital needs to be part of that whole journey, rather than when I first got into the market, it was like, we build out a store and it's amazing. And then you go, yeah, we need to hang some screens on. Where do we put them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I know a great example. There was a well-known international brand in Regent Street, and they did a pop-up store that cost $500,000. And they got all the influencers, designers in on the day. Then they had to do a presentation, and they ended up wheeling out a screen with some extension leads. And they just blew everything out the window because it was like no one had thought about this screen. So, you know, it needs to be at the beginning. You know, some of the projects myself and Dan have worked on recently where, you know, it's like we want to put a screen in a window, and it's like, yeah, but you need to allow for light levels and watch your content. So it goes back to Baoli's comps, you know, well, we haven't thought about the content. Well, why do you need a screen in the window? What's the customer journey? What's the experience? And I think that's where if we can be at the beginning of that whole store design and how it all fits together and what you're actually trying to achieve.
I think it helps at that point.
Well, and then you go back to the ecosystem. You know, the manufacturer hardware and the integrator typically never really introduced at that front end, and that's where, you know, Mark and lead consultancy come in, because ultimately they are at that front end of the journey. You know, they are saying up front, and Mark's saying up front that, you know, we need to consider that bit at the very end, and you know, that helps us, because then when we get introduced, you know, potentially 2 months earlier than we would have going to be, you know, it allows us to then introduce you guys into that forefront. So it all starts with that first conversation, and like I said, it's getting retailers to understand that, you know, you don't put something in place as a last resort. You know, like you say, build with the furniture, build with, you know, the electrical runs. You know, how many store installations do we see, and we'll get onto it later, that, you know, they're not maintained, or they're not looked after, or they're not thought out. You know, there's cable runs running everywhere.
Well, they don't even have enough sockets.
Yeah, they don't have enough sockets.
You know, there's a proper thought process, isn't there? It's essentially, now you design the store, you have the thought process going into it, and the screens become a part of that aesthetics of the store as well.
So Callum, throw it back to you guys. Baoli, you know, you guys are the experts in tech. I'm the kind of more visionary, but, you know, how do you guys see the evolution of LED and the next step changes? And
I think with LED we're going to see improved technology, but Baoli,
Absolutely.
you guys are closer to it, so you must see from a sales perspective the shift.
Of course. Actually, I just recently read a report in the Pro AV industry. Last year, 2024, finally LED surpassed LCD in terms of selling value. So you will see the continued growth of LED. Particularly in the future, will be new technology, which macro LED will be in the market, which is able to deliver more power saving, more flexible displays, and more high definition. So outside space, definitely it will have a big long way to go on the LED market. And apart from the LED, the one I particularly interest to technology, I think going to do very well. One is e-paper. Probably you already say that somehow. E-paper technology, which the big advantage of that is doesn't need a power socket. So like one iPhone battery, you can roughly run about 3,000 image changing. So that's if you change one day a poster, which lasts for 10 years. And then for retailers, if you think about it, they can easily remove that. As you said, you have a no socket, don't worry, just move here to there. So it's a lot advantage. Of course, technology still is the early stage. At the moment, I believe the best e-paper technology only can display 60,000 colors. So it's far less compared to LCD or LED technology. But any technology is developing. Give another few years, e-paper definitely is one of the main ones in our display industry. That's one part. Another part, which is I'm always excited since many years ago, is holographic, 3D holographic. The concept, nothing's new. It's just technology getting better and better, but still not there yet. Become affordable position. We still need time. But eventually, I believe that going to deliver good value, because that's very natural, immersive engagement with customer. That's customer always wants. We're just waiting for that technology. Give another few years, we're getting better and better. So these two technology in terms of display is really interesting to me. Apart from that, it's not only the display need the innovation, but also the content as well. If we think about the digital signage, I started this industry, we started Allsee almost 18 years ago. So on that time, the digital advertising display or digital signage display just introduced to the market. It's a new advertising channel. People loved it. retailers, marketing team loved it because new channel of advertising, people get excited. But now if we walk to the high street, we walk to the, the main city center, you see the screens everywhere now. It's become a stage which is the people starting to ignore this display. It will be. So also it's for us, people who play this industry, think about the content. You cannot be simply just showing the AdWords commercials. You have to think showing some really, really interesting content for the viewers. Yeah. Basically, for example, we have another project. We started to showing the artwork, mix between the art with the commercials. I think that's better delivery, the content for the customer. But that's only early stage. I believe that from marketing company, from content creation company, from whole ecosystem, we need to probably think that as well. Yeah. So that's another one.
That sounds like another podcast.
I know, exactly. We have discussed that, yeah.
But Baoli, the problem we have, like probably, for myself, Dean, and Dan is, that's just adding another layer of complexity to it. You've got these agencies running media advertising networks, but no one can answer a question I always keep asking is, so I'm sat there as a client, and I'm like, do I put a poster up? Do I do active light box, static light box, LED, LCD, hologram, or e-paper? Yeah. And no one can answer the question as to what's the difference. I'm running a retail media network. If I put a poster up, what's the impact of, am I going to sell more on that poster, or do I put a static light box? And to your point around energy and efficiency, do I just put the poster up? So, I think that's where, I think there's still a long way to go for, I think for us and retailers, just in terms of, it's an ever evolving world, and I think it's just hard for retailers to keep up. On what's the best use of technology.
It is, because unfortunately I don't believe the retailer necessarily knows what they want. I think sometimes they're just having digital for the sake of having digital and not wanting to be left behind. But going on Mark's point about posters, I know that we've worked with Now Signage on a white paper which calculates the carbon offsetting between traditional printed posters and digital signage based upon the number of times, the number of locations that poster is changed. So Media Groups was founded probably 25 years ago and was a print solution provider. So our background has always been the dark side, as we see, as I see it now. But I spent some time working with the World Land Trust, the Woodland Trust, working on carbon offsetting, etc. And right now we've got a calculation in place that we can determine which is the most efficient source of marketing based upon just a few calculations. So we like to engage with the customer at the beginning and understand what they want to achieve from digital, and then we can be an advisory rather than we can give you a screen without actually asking the purpose.
So therefore, what you're getting from it,
Because there have been times when we've gone to site to look at an installation and we've left really disappointed. The fact that image has stayed as a static image for 2 months. I'm like, you didn't listen, you may as well kept your poster. That's the truth of it. Yeah, it looks sexy in a window to have a digital display, but to actually get a return on that investment, it probably wasn't the best thing to do. So we do like to engage at the very beginning to understand what the customer.
And using the content management system, that's what it's there for. Is to, I know we'll touch on that in a minute about the difference of content management.
It's probably a good move into the CMS. That is actually with the content management systems and the different types, but also what kind of feedback are we getting from the CMS? Are you getting analytics from it? And how do you utilise the CMS systems now to really justify and even in some cases show the ROIs on the content that's displayed?
Oh, I think we touched on earlier about screens on walls and being put on a wall now is can be done, and they want more from it. They want something more, and either that's a higher value in the hardware itself, and it offers a diversify, so holographic for engagement, or e-paper for the fact it's a sustainable solution. But then we go into like the CMS, and a CMS updating remotely is now kind of being done, and it's been seen as a flooded market, and really now it's about what that CMS system does for the retailer or for the maintenance partner that sits on the back end of it. Because, you know, from a retail perspective, yes, updating that content's great, but if we talk about ad revenue, it's about getting the analytics back that says, you know, it has had the amount of plays, it can be evidenced. You know, can that CMS platform look at day parting? Can it look at triggers? Can it look at all of the things that are going to be next, which allows for that engaging content to be put on, so that, you know, advertisers, for example, on hot days versus cold days can be more effective versus them playing on rotation once every 6. You know, and it's about kind of that CMS platform being able to do that. And what we're seeing is retailers now engaging with that CMS platform a little bit more and understanding, you know, it can do more. And if we got the agencies and brands to see what it could do, it would drive that through the roof as well.
Dan, I'd love to know the answer on this, because I see CMS a little bit like behind the smartphone. You know, I used to work in telecoms. People come to me and go, I want the latest phone. Why? Well, because I just want it. You know, and you probably only use 20% of the functionality of an iPhone or whatever. And I think CMS is the same. Is, well, I need it to do all this, and it's like, well, what actually do you use it for in the end? Are you just scheduling it? You know, are you looking at the analytics? You actually interpret the analytics? You know, I'd love to know the answer.
And I think it is so varied because, you know, Allsee, as I'm speaking from a manufacturer's perspective, we have screens in some stores which are just literally one location. They still want to have the CMS for that, but they don't actually use, you know, 80% of the features they have. All they want to be able to do is push content to it remotely, and that's it. They're not necessarily interested in all of the analytics side of it. In some cases, they're not even very interested in programming content to come on at a certain time. They just want to be able to push content to it straight away. But obviously, with platforms now adding more features and functionality to it, I think it is very much it's a horses for courses. For the larger scale projects that we roll out, there's certainly going to be a demand for them to be able to understand exactly what's happening on each screen, understand, you know, how many times has content been played on a specific screen at a specific location. But there also needs to be easy ways to deploy content to individual stores. So we see, you know, some of the larger brands, whether it's coffee shops or whatever it is that are serving local communities, they might want to have the content specifically targeted towards those local communities. And then that makes it much more difficult. It's no longer a case of publish this content to 1,000 screens. It's publish these independent pieces of content to these independent stores, which adds a level of complexity.
Geoscheduling, you know, scheduling based on location and why that location, you know, is it? And we said their location is one factor, but, you know, could it be that we look at different types of stores, city centre stores, suburb stores, you know, and that's then become the reason why you're scheduling shopping centres, etc. You know, you can tag them essentially as those and schedule content based on that, and that means that you're then getting a more effective content delivered to the right screens at the right time. You're not just scheduling, you know, a Coca-Cola brand, for example, out to every site. You're scheduling, you know, maybe Diet Pepsi in city centres or Diet Coke in city centres because it's targeted more to that demographic. Absolutely.
But that analytics piece has opened a can of worms in a good way. So we've shared some of the analytics with some retailers, and they were shocked to find that 25% of their locations, it could be 1,000 locations, those screens were not connected to the internet, hadn't been connected to the internet for 30 days plus, and therefore any content that they thought they were pushing through an incumbent CMS wasn't being delivered. And I use an example of how important it is to keep on top of that online connectivity piece. So if a screen goes down, we can actually trigger an email to a retailer to actually say there's a problem. We can do it within 5 minutes of it losing connectivity, or we can do it an hour, or we can do it the following day. But the best example I can give is when the Queen passed away, when it was announced. We had one particular retailer that within 20 minutes, each screen in the country, content changed to show a memorial of the Queen. While other retailers were worried about going online to find a digital print company, even though they had screens, they couldn't put that message on there. There was a printed poster next to the digital screen showing that memorial piece because they couldn't actually communicate to the screen. That once they installed it, they thought they were good. So yeah, that the analytics does open a can of worms, but as I said, in a good way.
Opens the conversation, doesn't it? That's the main thing.
Brilliant. Which is the one you just mentioned. The customers only utilize about 20% of the CMS functions. I agree with that. But let us think that way. This is a fact, but that's not our customer's fault. Whose fault I would take? It's CMS, it's our fault. When you develop software function, you should be responsible to let them easily to use it, because it's useful information. It's why they don't use it. I think, as I said, it's our fault. How do we resolve that problem? Obviously, it's any software company problem. I think in here, probably everybody talking about AI, I really do think AI is a solution. How do we do that? As you said earlier, we have these statistics of demographics or whatever data you have that. Why we have to rely on the marketing manager to analyze that and make judgment. Yeah. We can purely just use AI to automatically make judgment. Okay, we should change the content now. For example, the evidence you just gave earlier, when Queen passed away, we should publish the right content. The content should change. And then in the content side, obviously, the one you just mentioned as well, which you need a marketing company or digital creation company to deliver that content. Actually, AI in here also can resolve that. AI should be in the future create the right content according to the data automatically. So that means customer use it without even their personal engagement. In here, actually, ourselves, we already started a research project with collaborating with a few universities. We sponsored a PhD student and research fellows to do this AI content creation, automatically generate posters for you, and also integrate other hardwares, for example, sensors, cameras, give retailers real-time information, and then use AI to help you to make judgment. I think that's going to be the future. Obviously, we are talking about this research project, 5 years plan, not to immediately have that now, but I assume in 5 years' time you will have that, get benefit from that.
Should be the goal, shouldn't it?
Exactly.
And then we work backwards from there, don't we? And you know, we took that AI element, talking about content and talking about it, the functionality in CMS platforms, you know, that supports the maintenance aspect as well. You know, that supports the maintenance aspects of online connectivity. You know, there's 20% that we've triggered it to say at the moment, we've got, you know, 20% of your estate is offline. That 20% had X amount offline for a period of time. That triggers a maintenance visit. It takes all the human error out of, and takes the spreadsheets out of the equation, doesn't it? And that's where AI, you know, embracing it, and as an ecosystem, embracing it, you know, and actually trying to be the forefront of it is where we're going to win, because we know that that's where we'll be in 5 years' time. How do we get there quicker? We'll find that path. But that links into that CMS platform, because that is where the data is from, you know, online, offline connectivity, last connections, you know, as much as there might be device managements and various different things on there, it all comes from the CMS platform. You know, CMS platform schedules it, it gives us the data as how long it's been played for, what other content's there, that is where the information is. And that's what could trigger for bespoke content, for, you know, the Queen passing, unfortunately, you know, trigger content, create content based on this, deliver to all screens, X amount of screens hasn't been scheduled to because they're offline, triggers a maintenance visit. You know, no human error.
It makes sense.
To deliver that, actually not easy, as Dean earlier said, the device management, right? You want to know device status. I found in our industry a little bit strange. Content management with device management, it's two parts, always people separately. Software company is so hard to get the hardware from all the manufacturers. And the hardware company doesn't like to share that. I think that problem, as I said, we're building this ecosystem. I think can be a lot more friendly. Yes, some hardware factory or software company, yes, they claim they have this API, but they never understand. It's not simply you give the API, they can integrate. Maybe they don't have the resources, maybe they don't have that knowledge to do that. I'll give you a recent example. We're working with Dean on the maintenance kind of software on that. So if you want to access the hardware from your system, the status, from your maintenance system, basically, we can simply just give you API. Here you go, you do it. But you may not have that technology to build everything inside the system. So I think in here, the content management software or hardware company, whatever, they really do need more engaging, helping the system integrators, maintenance company to get that set up. Same as the content creation as well. Recently, I just talked with a marketing company. They produce 100,000 content, want to push the screen. The existing content management software, they designed probably not able to handle such scale. So how do we work together? It's not simply here you go, it's API. No, it's you need to talk more, to collaborate. Yes, so they get all this quick information comes through. So once again, it's Mark's idea is we need to collaborate more, build this ecosystem too. So content management system, they can show their power, and then the other partners job much easier. So I think
Baoli, that's where we need to be more proactive in terms of kind of helping the retailers, because you could be dealing with a procurement person that 1 minute's buying digital, next minute he's buying staples, or he's buying fire extinguishers. They're trying to be master of everything. And we are the masters of kind of digital innovation, and that's where I think retailers struggle. To your point on like hologram, I'm a retailer, I've got a big glass window. Do I put a poster in there? Do I put a hologram in there, e-paper, or do I put a nice bright shiny LED in there? And what's the impact if I put one or the other in? And and I think retailers are still a little bit siloed in terms of, you're dealing with somebody in purchasing, but you need to be talking to the marketing people. So you need to kind of pull all these people together, sit them in the room, and go, what are you trying to achieve? What's it from content? Customer experience. For me, it is about customer experience, get more customers, spend more time in stores, and buy more products. And unfortunately, sometimes retailers, it takes 10 people to get them in a room.
I guess it's a different approach depending on who you're talking to. So from my perspective, I've seen CMSs and software almost win projects now before the hardware. So the software side of things has been discussed more than the hardware.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because they're talking to somebody in particular at a business, maybe from the marketing side.
Yeah.
But if you're speaking to someone from the procurement side, they may be looking more at the physical hardware and saying, okay, well, this is what we need. So Mark, in your experience, and obviously you're outstanding at this in terms of when you're approaching these customers of yours and you've got some huge high-end clients, are you leading from a software side, or do you lead from a hardware side, or is it?
We don't lead from anywhere. Our strategy is, we build out some decks. We have a reputation for building out some pretty good decks. We just do it from keep saying we do it from customer experience. We got approached recently by a global sports retailer going, what's the art of the possible? What can we do? How do our customers? Why should they come in our sports store and not the one next door? And it comes down to this whole TikTok, Instagrammable. Kids want to hang out in trendy stores. So for us, it's kind of leading with customer experience. If we can be at the beginning, it's great because we can help scope it out. We've just done a project in New York, and this is a great example. Clients just bought an LED wall, probably $15,000. We went in the beginning, we just got a supply of LED wall that's going to be a static picture. We asked them about the CMS, and they've got a Novastar, and they said, can we send you a dongle? And we're like, right, okay. So if we've been in the beginning, it might not be an LED wall, it could have been something else. And they've got no concept change in the content. And they've just spent £15,000 on a nice, bright, shiny box that's not really going to add any value. And this is my argument a little bit with retailers when Battersea first opened, and myself and Dean, we had some retailers come to us going, we want an LED wall, and we want bigger than next doors. Why? Oh, because it just needs to be bigger than next doors. Yeah, but that's not a store strategy. How many lipsticks or how many foundations you're going to have to sell for a £250,000 LED wall? And I think if we can get in at the beginning around store design, what the customer journey is and the analytics and the flow of customers and traffic, and I think, it's not about selling screens anymore. It is AV, it's analytics, it's audio, lift and learn.
Yeah, but it's all those pieces pulled together, ultimately delivering experience, in-store, immersive, digital experience.
Because Baoli, people come to me and go, retail media networks, we just buy a load of screens. I was like, well, hang on about lift and learn. Or it doesn't have, it can be other lift and learn technology, but it can be, if I go in there and I engage a product and it actually makes me buy something, then that's retail media network. It's, it's giving an ROI. It's not about.
I think that's something interesting as well. The retail media network. So this is a term to me relatively new. Last 6 months to myself, and then all of a sudden it's retail media networks everywhere. Could somebody just clear that up? What is retail media networks?
Yeah.
What
Good
is it?
question.
So somebody says, okay, well, we want some screens. We're looking at this model, or do we procure the kit ourselves?
Callum, I would just say from my side, it's just like targeted advertising. If you do the analytics, you've got above the line advertising, which is more kind of just mass media, and then below the line, which I kind of see it as below the line. But it's just targeted marketing that enables you to target specific, population of shopper. So I think there's a lot of hysteria around it at the moment. I have a phrase, and you might want to cut this one out, but it was dumb and dumber. Is you've got a lot of people that think they know what retail media networks are selling to people that think they need to buy it, but don't really know why they're buying it. And I think there's a lot of hysteria around, especially grocery market, because the grocery market's pretty tough. So you've got supermarkets going, I've got people promising me they can make me 100 million a year. And in reality, we'll have this conversation next year as to the ones that got promised 100 million and actually how much did they make. Dan's probably got.
Yeah. I mean, we go back to the phrase, and Mark is absolutely right. I think what he said earlier, which is that it's not new. It's not a new thing that's in the market. It's just now being talked about more. Retailers have naturally the space, and previously they would have used a retail media network for print, for example, where they would do print advertising on bays to uplift sales and improve customer journey and generate revenue from the fact. And now we're talking about it from a digital point of view. And we've said earlier, buying a load of screens, and it's like, well, it's not just about buying a load of screens, or buying a load of hardware. What actually are you trying to achieve? We talk about neutral locations and non-neutral locations. When we say a neutral location, I'm talking about window spaces where there isn't a brand sitting below it. That allows advertising for endemic and non-endemic products or services, because essentially it's a neutral space to sell to. You can sell as much of that ad revenue as you want, because that's a space that is footfall essentially. And then when we talk about the layer of targeting, then we talk about a gondola end as an example, where there is product underneath, and that strategy is going to be very different to a neutral location, because you're not going to be able to go and advertise it to everybody that walks past.
You're not going to have Coca-Cola advertising
on Pepsi thing.
Yeah.
So you're going to only have very specific, and it's again a down placement, and it's all part of the same thing. It's in targeted advertise versus where it was at the front of the store. And when we talk about buying a load of screens, well, why are you buying the screens? Where are you putting them? Who are you trying to attract? What are you trying to gain from that digital or that print or that advertising or that advertisement? Is it to get people to go and buy the product underneath? Is it to come into store? Is it to attract people in? Is it to get people to walk down the aisle next to it? And there has to be a goal with digital in the remit we're talking about now. There has to be a goal with it. What are we trying to achieve? It's not just trying to get X amount of budget from £100 million, because yes, I get it. If you were to sell that advertising at full scope every day of the year, yes, you would generate £100 million. Fine. It's not how it works. And it's about understanding what the brands are trying to achieve with it, because they only have so much money. We talked about it earlier. They only have so much money in a pot that they will spend on grocery retail sector. And it's about the people that actually think about that retail media network perspective and say, what do I want to achieve from putting digital in that space there? And who am I going to go and attract to go and buy that advertising space? And if, for example, we talk about gondola ends as a point of view, the product's underneath it. Well, what if those brands say no? What are you doing then? Because there's only so much internal advertising a retailer can do. You've then got to think about what that strategy is, not just selling that space to who's below it. And that's why, again, from the retail media point of view, at the moment, it's not just about, yes, it's volume, because obviously brands like volume, but it's about that higher ad requirement or higher ad spend that you're demanding by giving them more bang for their buck. What are the brands getting? Are they getting data? Are they getting higher product purchase? Are they getting higher footfall? Are they getting targeted advertising based on who's in front of the screen? And when we talk about retail media network, the problem is that certain retailers obviously were first to the market with it. Started out with absolutely the right ethos, and I've obviously have been caught up. but probably been caught up by retailers that are just putting displays in and not actually thinking about what that space means. You know, are they replacing print? Are they, you know, and if retail media network needs to be thought out a little bit further, you know, what do the brands want? You know, because it's great we talked about 20% of a CMS platform, but what do the brands who actually give the money that generate for that another screen in 3 months' time, what do they want from it? Do they want the data back? Do they want a more engaging position? Do they want product underneath?
Yeah.
And that, for me, is the bit that's missing at the moment is what do brands want from this? And that's when it links into the CMS.
Callum, that's where I think kind of between, you know, the parties, Room Media Group, Lead Consultancy, Allsee, you know, there's so much work to be done. You know, just look on LinkedIn and, you know, there's people like Ian Scott and some of these other guys where they go, and somebody's obviously, you know, a Coca-Cola has paid for the advertising and the screen's there and the Coke aisle's about 10 down the road. And it's just like, no one's thought about it. So it's, you know, it'd be interesting. I read a piece earlier, I think they were saying that retail media network globally was going to be $179 billion. You know, and I think people look at Walmart and some of those guys and, you know, the Amazons of this world, you know, and they're probably not the norm, but people look at the revenue and then go, we can replicate that. And, you know, and I think, unfortunately, yeah, I think retailers are still somewhat disjointed. You know, I think some of the conversations probably need to be further up the ladder just in terms of that whole strategy piece. You know, because it's, you know, we're aware of certain supermarkets where they're using outdoor screen, they're using somebody, then you've got internal, then they might own garages, and it's completely siloed at times. There's no joined up thinking. And I'm not blaming retailers, but I think it's, you know, life's moving at such a speed.
It's interesting, Dan mentioned about the brands wanting to push the boundaries in terms of their space, but I think the retailer has to take a part in this as well. What's that screen to generate? Are you generating the screen to get more footfall and increase in sales pertinent to the advertisement that's on the screen? Or do you want to just get revenue? And if you just want to get revenue, you're opening the doors outside of your traditional sector to products and services that are not associated with that brand, and you're no longer in control of what brands are being advertised on your screen.
But you generate X
but there are retailers who are taking that second option and having advertisements that aren't actually relevant to their core product range. And for me, I think that's you're missing the beat there, because yes, your revenue might be higher by taking a little bit more advertising for brands outside your sector, but you're not having the traditional benefit of a digital screen that statistically increases footfall and increasing sales.
So it's important to weigh the both up. Look at both sides.
But then you've got to be careful of, you know, so for me it's all about customer experience. But if I go into a supermarket and they've got screens on every end aisle, they've got audio playing, you know, it's going to feel like I've walked into a nightclub. And it's just like, you know, white noise. It's like, I just want to come and buy some cereal and I've got all these flashing things going on. And you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, that, you know, turns customers round. So, you know, it's a fine balance.
Yeah, and that's why retail media is so wide, is that it will be different for every retailer as to what their priorities are. You know, a convenience location is different to a supermarket. You know, that journey is going to be different for a customer. For a brand, they're going to look at spend very differently in those two locations. And, you know, that's why retail media network is so wide, is that it can be anything in that parameter. And really, the key, what we're saying, is that the retailer and the retailer and needs to communicate with the brands about what they're after, but also the retailer needs to take some ownership of, you know, what you said there, they're probably taking X amount of revenue, but not realising there's more to be generated from a logical thought process of why they have that screen in that location. And, you know, that's our job, is to educate retailers. And we said earlier, educate marketing departments, educate procurement departments, because procurement departments compared to marketing will be more budget constricting rather than exciting. You know, and that's the journey we take our customers on. But again, it goes down to the ecosystem that, you know, it's not just, you know, for example, us talking from a hardware and software perspective, it's talking about the customer journey. And that's why the ecosystem is so important, again, because we're engaging retailers, brands, and everybody in between on taking them on the journey and not just trying to provide them a piece of kit. and a software, you know, and a license anymore. It's about giving them a reason why they have that there. You know, sometimes that means that we say no. You know, we're not going to put a screen in the window. Why do you want a screen in the window for? What are you getting from it? What content are you putting out? Sometimes it's about saying no, but actually educating the retailer on the what they can have in the future. You know, they'll probably generate more money in the future with a bit more of a logical thought process. And, you know, that comes at, unfortunately, potentially saying no sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think
Dan, you could sit down in the room with them. It'd be great to do it, you know, challenge anyone who's probably listening to this podcast, but, you know, to get some retailers and brands actually sit in a room. Because everyone's trying to do the same thing. We're trying to sell stuff and make some money. You've got brands want to sell more of their products, and the retailers want to sell some stuff. So to sit down in the room and go, look, you know, you don't need, you know, you've got some of these agencies out there that are running media networks, you know. I think we can shortcut the system a little bit, but it'd be great, to Dan's point, to kind of get the brands in there and go, right, how do we do this? You know, so we're all experts.
We are building out the CMS platforms to be able to compensate for ad networks, etc. But there's also the consideration of the hardware costs. So we're in a fortunate position where we can offer the three solutions. So the customer can make a capex and buy very competitive hardware and CMS solutions from us. We can help them finance that. We've got finance companies that can help them finance that period over the period of the warranty, which can be 3 or sometimes 5 years. So then they see a greater, longer return on the investment. But then you've got the risk-adverse retailers who don't want to actually pay for a screen. And in that instance, we could actually provide them screens free of charge for a return on a shared split of the revenue that the advertising generates. Now, I'll be honest, that isn't the right solution for a retailer to have free screens because they're giving away so much of their advertising space. You know, they instead of having a finance of a £10 million capex that could return them £50 million a year in revenue, they're prepared to take £25 million of revenue for a shared split. Well, for years 2, 3, 4 and 5, they're giving away 100 million for the cost of a £10 million capex.
That won't happen won't continue. Short-lived.
It is short-lived, but a lot of retailers jumping on that bandwagon, dare I say, to say they want the screens free of charge and they're prepared to take that advertising.
But then that's about like the analogy of buying a house. If you buy a house for £500,000, the bank give you the money. You're not giving them £500,000 back. You're going to give them back £2 million. It's the same. If somebody gives you a free screen, an £800 screen is probably going to cost you £2,500.
Yeah, so we're trying to look at all the options at the minute. But it's interesting you talking about the different responsibilities. We're in a fortunate position where brands will contact us now, give us inquiries directly. I would hate to try to prospect a retailer to find out who would be responsible for the purchase of a digital screen. You've got operations, marketing, digital transformation, procurement. Who is making that decision, or why are they making that decision? I think that's what needs to be really considered within those businesses.
Because then we said there, you know, we touched on the e-paper, for example. You know, brands and retailers might want to promote, or the decision maker might want to promote sustainability as that answer. You know, and therefore we look at e-paper as replacement of print rather than doing digital screens. You know, and then we're providing a sustainable solution that everybody wants. But until it's a reason why are we replacing print? It's traditional for retail media network or for digital, is to replace print, or what is it there for? You know, and if we talk about replacing print, you know, you can replace it with an LED, an LCD, holographic fan, e-paper, which allows them for diverse remote updates, etc. But it's more sustainable versus, you know, a traditional LCD screen. But then also is sustainably better than replacing that print every 28 days. And like you said, that technology is ever evolving, and Baoli touched on it earlier. You know, sooner or later, you know, how many times do we walk through train stations and we see those posters all the way down the escalator? You know, that is the prime business case to replace those with e-paper today. You know, and then we talk about that in a retail space. You know, how easy would it be to look at an entire strategy and go, okay, that's LED, that's holographic, that's LCD, that's e-paper, and that's print still, you know, because it doesn't get changed very often. It's a notice, for example. And like I said, that's how we'll probably negate eventually who is the decision maker. But there'll never be one, there'll be multiple. But if you can appease, you know, ESG department because you've got a sustainable solution versus one. IT because there's a network capability which is independent to their network. Marketing because they've got the exciting bit that they can fire through. Procurement because it's at a price point thing, and that's the challenge for us, isn't it? To make that price point attractive enough for a procurement department to go, yeah, everybody else is really happy. And that's where again the ecosystem falls really nicely. Is that this, you know, as much as we're all in business, there's a logic to what we're doing.
For sure.
And it's at a price point that most people wouldn't be able to compete with.
But Dan, I think, you know, going back to the ecosystem, you know, we know the kind of the designers, we're in the beginning, you know, if you're building out a media network, you know, and we know the furniture guys, you know, we've worked previously, we know the shelving guys in supermarkets. So we actually know that if you're going to put an end cap, you know, we've worked with the shelving guys. So actually, Mr. Supermarket, we've already done that bit. Yeah, I'm going to go and talk to them, you know, so we're trying to do all the jobs and put it all together to give that kind of corny we're saying about one-stop solution within reason.
But it works, and I think that kind of brings it all around into a full circle and gives a lot of food for thought there. I think we're just about hitting our point now. We've had a pretty long discussion, covered quite a lot of topics there. So I think we'll wrap it up here. You know, thank you very much everyone for your input. Appreciate you taking the time to come out and chat with us, and for the viewers, thank you for tuning in as well. Hopefully next time we'll be able to keep this up and have more intelligent conversations and understand the market a little bit more. But for this time, thank you very much. And yeah, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.